welcome to our video lesson, and today we are going to talk about speaking skills. Under speaking skills, we have episode 8, the nature of oral communication process, episode 9, principle of oral communication, episode 10, oral communication strategies, episode 11, one-way oral communication, episode 12, oral communication, episode 13, integrating oral communication with other skills. The discussants, yours truly, Igdalino Generos, and Ma'am Gabani Maria Isabel, Ma'am Avalon Aubrey Amor, and Sir Lopez Ryan. Okay, episode 8, the nature of the oral communication process. This episode provides insight into the nature of the communication process, with emphasis on the speaking phase of the communication model. It suggests techniques and strategies on how to communicate effectively using the oral mode. Presented to are the different types of oral communication, namely intrapersonal, interpersonal, and public communication. Finally, barriers to communication are discussed. These include language-related barriers, barriers related to delivery, psychological barriers within the speaker or the listener, the barriers from the setting or the situation. These are the objectives for this episode. Describe the nature of the communication process, focusing on the speaking phase of the communication model. Cite instances and intrapersonal, interpersonal, and public communication, and how skills in those type of communication may be developed in the classroom. Identify barriers of communication and suggest ways to remedy them. Describe some techniques for improving speaking skills and delivery. So, what is communication? Communication involves an exchange of messages among sources and receivers via channel or medium. However, for a complete exchange to take place, return communication called feedback is forthcoming. An important variable that could affect communication is the noise, that is psychological noise in the sender or the receiver, and physical noise in the setting or surroundings. Psychological noise would have an effort on how the sender expresses his message and how the receiver reacts to it. Physical noise, on the other hand, could affect the eligibility and clarity of the message. So, next slide. We have here the SMCR model of communication, which was developed by David Berlo and includes 4 components: the sender, the message, the channel, and the receiver. This model views communication as the transfer of information. As you can see, it's illustrated there. The channel, which we had the messages, the receiver, and then the feedback, the sender, and back to the message. Types of communication. First, we have the intrapersonal communication. The sender and receiver of the message is one of the same person. This usually takes place when one tries to clarify his or her ideas or still his or her fears, and so thinks aloud and talks to himself or herself. It could also take the form of soliloquy or monologue, where one attempts to weigh aloud several options before arriving at a decision. As such, this type of communication is itself a feedback process. So, your internal voice or your mental imagery, and most times keep you company as you take action on different matters. Like when you're speaking in public, your inner voice create a script of speech that would follow along. Another example, when you're at the grocery store, when you're deciding on planning something, like for example a cabbage, we have one that is affordable and one is expensive. So you have this inner voice talking to yourself whether to buy the expensive one or the cheaper one. So that is intrapersonal communication. Next, interpersonal communication could be dyadic. That is an exchange of message between two persons, or could be small group discussion where a small group of persons interact among themselves on a topic of their choice. So, conversation where both parties are actively participating and trying to understand each other. So this is dyadic, so it is between two, or it could be a small group discussion or a small group of person. So for example, on a job interview, you have the applicant and the interviewer. Another example is on online chats where the messages and the receiver are exchanging. The virtual meeting also, it is similar over Zoom or Skype, where you can exchange conversation or message by the receiver and the sender. So that is interpersonal communication. Let's go on to public communication. Gatherings with live interaction where most individuals are audience rather than sources. The sources are usually one or several persons whose presentation or performance become the object of the gathering. Public communication example are seminars or press conference or political campaigns or public speaking events. So those are some examples of public communication. Those are gatherings with live interactions of individuals where individuals are the audience. Okay? Next, the barriers to effective communication. A number of reasons may be cited for failure to communicate effectively. Some of these are language related and have to do with the message. Communication cannot be said to have taken place if the message was not understood and responded to as intended. These are the barriers: mispronunciation, different meanings attached to a word, interact tense, situation or setting, and delivery. Let us first have mispronunciation. So mispronunciation could result in a wrong interpretation of the message, especially if the receiver fails to take note of the context in which the word was said. For non-native speakers, pronouncing the word ship as sheep would change the meaning of the message. Look at the ship. Whereas you, the sender, you are referring to a transportation vehicle, the ship. Because of mispronouncing it as sheep, the receiver interprets the message to as you are referring to an animal instead of a transportation vehicle. So that is the one barrier of mispronunciations of words. Communication breakdown could also result from a lack of awareness of pronunciation of a given word in the different varieties of English. Let's go on to the meanings attached to a word. Different meanings attached to a word could also result in communication breakdown. Many words have denominative and connotative meanings. The former refers to the designated meaning of the word given in the dictionary, while the latter has to do with personal meanings attached to the word. Okay, next, the interactants. An interactant, namely the source and the receiver of the message. So these are the interactants. This is mainly psychological. We take more kindly to feedback given by person we like and admire. Our reactions to a message are conditioned and some extent by our opinion of our reaction to a message are conditioned to some extent by our opinion of and feelings for the sender of the message. Moreover, the way we word our message and the way we respond are affected by our feelings during the interactions. At times, we may not mind remarks made about us, but at other times, we may react depending on how we feel at the moment. Still, another variable that affect communication is the delivery of the message. The volume of one's voice and his rate of speaking could have an effect of the intelligibility and clarity of the message. Said too softly, it would be barely audible, and uttered too fast, it may not be picked up at all by the listener. Finally, the situation or setting could also cause communication breakdown. Physical noise is likely to distort a message or render it incomprehensible. The size of the room and the size of the audience are other situation-related factors that could hamper effective communication. Thus, it might be pointed out that the factors affecting the different variables in the communication process are the sender, the message, channel, receiver, and situation could impede or enhance communication. So, the variables in the communication process. As pointed out earlier, there are factors that affect the different variables in the communication process. These factors are listed down under the variables affected in the Berlow's communication model, focusing on oral communication. So we have the source, the message, the channel, and receiver. Under the source, we have communication skills in encoding ideas, attitude towards the topic and audience, shared presuppositions, knowledge, social system, and culture. And the message, it is ideational content, treatment of the topic, organizational structure, choice of words, linguistic accuracy. Under channel, we have the volume, rate of delivery, physical noise in the setting, use of verbal aids, clarity, media, live or tape. It could be live or tape. In receiver, we have communication skills in decoding ideas, attitude towards the topic and speaker or the source, a shared presupposition with the speaker, knowledge, social system, and also culture. Okay, now we have improving oral delivery. As pointed out earlier, one of the barriers to effective oral communication is delivery of the message. The intelligibility and clarity of the message rest not only on how it is constructed, but also on how it is articulated. Some exercises are recommended to improve articulation. These have to do with the release of air and sound as well as the flexibility of speech organs. So we have the breathing exercise, flexibility of facial muscles, and sound release. Let's have first the breathing exercise. Inhale slowly through the nose and fill the lower part of your lungs with air. Your abdomen will begin to bulge out like a balloon. Continue to inhale until the abdomen is fully extended. Then, expand the rib section outward to the sides and fill the midsection of the chest with air. Let the breath fill the upper part of the lung by lifting the chest arc and letting it expand upward to the side. The process should take about 5 seconds. So, hold your breath for 5 seconds, like inhaling. With practice, you should be able to hold it for 10 or more to give the lungs a chance to absorb all the oxygen. And exhale slowly, gently, contracting the lower abdomen first. As the lower lungs empty, the rib section will slowly deflate, followed by the upper chest. Pause for a second or two before beginning the next inhalation. Repeat 10 times. Practice often during the day so that this exercise becomes a part of your breathing pattern. So, how about we try it? Let's try the breathing exercise. First, inhale and exhale, letting the air out. So exercising it every day could improve your oral delivery. Next, flexibility of facial muscles. Open mouth as wide as possible, then slowly close mouth for a small O. Repeat 5 times. Move jaws slowly from left to right 5 times. Look up at the ceiling. Move mouth right to left, then right. Squint eyes. Move and make faces at the ceiling. Breathe deeply and release breath with a sound. Okay, flexibility of facial muscles. Open your mouth wide as possible, like and so your flexibility muscles are being flexed. This will improve our oral delivery. So this is part of an exercise. We flex our mouth, like opening it wide as you can, and then another exercise, you can move your mouth left to right, and then up, looking at the ceiling, and then downward again. So those are just practice of flexibility of facial muscles. Again, it is one of an exercise improving oral delivery. Next, sound release. To relieve inner stomach tensions, put hands on hips, take a deep breath, and release breath with a sound. Another deep breath, then release with a louder sound. Another deep breath, and still louder until you are almost shouting. Take care not to strain throat muscles. Oh, so this is sound release. You have to relieve your inner stomach's tension. So put your hands on hips. Put your hands on your hips. Take a deep breath and release breath with a sound. Like that. So we have another one. So that is sound release. So if you practice that every day, it will improve your oral delivery. So that was the end of my report of episode 8. Thank you for listening.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to episode 9, part 1 of communicative learning test entitled Principles of Communication. I am Ryan Lopez. So, let's start. In this episode, we have 4 objectives. First is to distinguish between critical consonant and vocal and vowel sounds. Number 2, describe how critical sounds are produced and how they may be thought. Number 3, explain the meaning of signaled by stress, pitch, and juncture. Number 4, cite materials that may be used to teach critical sounds. Let's start. Critical sounds. Sound in a target language that may be proved to be difficult for learners of a second language. One reason for the difficulty could be the sound in a target language may not be present in the native language. Most common sound not found in most Philippine language are the F, the V, and the TH, the th sound. Most people get confused of P and F. That's why some people may say por instead of for. Diba? Sometimes the V and the B. B as in boy, we would say B as in boy or V as in victory. When in fact we say, can you give me the flower vase? People would say flower base. It's different. Another source of difficulty arises when there is only one sound in the native language while there are several allied sounds in the target language. Example, most of the Filipino language only have one S sound compared to the 6 different hissing sounds present in the English language. For example, the sh, the z, the j, the sh. Those are the hissing sounds that may be hard for Filipinos to pronounce. There are critical vowel sounds for Filipino learners of English. This is because some Filipinos only have 5 vowels and others have only 3, whereas a semi-vowel consonant cluster is also pose a problem for Filipinos because most Filipino language didn't have several consonants coming one after another in succession. We have the consonant vowel, consonant, and the vowel consonant as well as simply the vowel. Syllable pattern, but rarely do the consonant vowel, the consonant vowel, and the vowel consonant or the vowel consonant and another consonant. When these occur, initial position is the tendency of Filipino students is to grip it to the pattern will be the vowel and consonant instead of several consonant. When the cluster occur in the final position, the tendency is to drop at the other end consonant. There are critical vowel sounds for Filipino learners of English. This is because some Filipinos only have 5 vowels and others have only 3, whereas a semi-vowel consonant cluster is also pose a problem for Filipinos because most Filipino language didn't have several consonants coming one after another in succession. We have the consonant vowel consonant, and the vowel consonant as well as simply the vowel. Syllable pattern, but rarely do the consonant vowel, the consonant vowel, and the vowel consonant, or the vowel consonant and another consonant. When these occur, initial position is the tendency of Filipino students is to grip it to the pattern will be the vowel and consonant instead of several consonant. When the cluster occur in the final position, the tendency is to drop the other end consonant. Nouns are stressed on the first syllable while the verbs are stressed on the second syllable. For example, we have for noun, we have say record. For the verb, we will say record. For address, address, and address. Address pertains to the house address, or the address meaning to entertain. The Gettysburg Address, just like it. Project, it's a different story. Another concern is the most common noun construct are constructed from the two-word verbs. Once more, the former has the primary stress on the first syllable, whereas the latter has the primary stress on the second syllable. Noun construct, drop out. For the verb construct, drop out. For noun, for example number 2, fall out. For verb construct, we will say fall out. Break down. Hold up. Still, very concerned is the noun construct compared to adjective plus noun combination. As pointed out earlier, noun constructs usually have the primary, tertiary stress pattern, while the word verb has the tertiary primary pattern. In the case of the adjective plus noun combination, the stress pattern is secondary primary. For example, grandfather. Adjective plus, if we would put it in a noun construct, grandfather. For the adjective plus noun, we will say grandfather. Two words, with two different meanings. That's it. Here are some of the examples on the screen. That's it.
Intonation or pitch. Intonation or pitch refers to the high or low tone of the voice used when uttering sentences. There are 4 pitch levels depending on the frequency of vibration of one's vocal cords. These are extra high to express strong emotion, high, medium, and low. Pitch range, on the other hand, refers to the distance between the highest and lowest pitch one can produce. A monotone makes no distinction between his high and low pitch, resulting in very dull and uninteresting talk. Of concern to the English teacher are the different intonation patterns that go with specific structures and the use of intonation to signal the feelings of the speaker. Some of the intonation patterns are as follows. non-final rising intonation, the final rising intonation, and final rising falling intonation. Let's first have non-final rising intonation. This type of intonation is used when unfinished thoughts, introductory phrases, series of words, and also when we express choices. Final rising intonation, how the voice rises at the end of a sentence, common in yes/no question. Like for example, asking, "Is this your bag?" So the rising intonation is at the end of the sentence, and it is also common in the yes/no questions. Final rising falling intonation describes how voice falls and then rises. So in this final rising intonation, the intonation rises and then falls in a sentence. Okay, next. Juncture. A pause or a slight delay in a continuous flow of speech. The sound's transition characterize the movement from sound to sound within a word or a phrase. There are 4 types of juncture. The first is the plus juncture. This is a short pause that occurs when words is an expression. The other 3 are pauses made between breath groups in sentences. The placement of the juncture could result in changes in meaning as indicated in these pairs of sentences. So we have here an example. We have number 1, first example. The treasurer said the manager is busy. So it is referring to that the treasurer is who is busy. So the second example, the treasurer said the manager is busy. So in this statement, it is the manager who is busy. So if you can see, there are pauses there are two the same sentences, but different in juncture. So in the first sentences, it is the treasurer who is busy, and the second sentence, it is the manager who is busy. So there are difference in meaning because of the juncture. The second example, the old man reported the accused was seen drunk. So it means that the old man was drunk. The old man reported the accused was seen drunk. So the accused was drunk. So see, you can see the difference if if we use juncture. Okay, next. So we have teaching tips. When teaching the critical consonant sound, it is important that the students know how the sound is produced. This would include the position of the speech organs in relation to one another. Some sounds like p and b are produced by pressing the lips together. Hence, they are bilabial sounds. The hard th and soft sounds are produced by putting one's tongues between the upper and lower sets of teeth. Hence, they are interdental sounds. So the p and b are the bilabial sounds, since these are produced when pressing the lips together. We produce the p and b sounds, and the hard th and the soft th sounds are produced by putting one's tongue between the upper and lower set of teeth, since they are called interdental sounds because they use teeth. That's why it's called interdental sounds. The second thing to point out is whether the sounds are voiced or voiceless. That is, do the vocal cords vibrate or not, and the sound is produced. Thus, although p and b are both bilabials, The former is voiceless while the other is voice. You can see the difference. The p is voiceless and the b is voiced. The same may be said of hard and soft. Hard t is voiced while the soft is voiceless. As you can see the difference. The hard is voiced while the soft is voiceless. In contrast, although p and f are voiceless, p is bilabial, whereas f is labiodental, since the upper set of teeth is made to touch the lower lip. The third thing one should know is how the air comes out with p and b. The air comes out like an explosion, hence they are called plosives or stops. This is because before releasing the air suddenly, it is first stopped or bottled up in one's mouth. In contrast with s, z, sh, z. The air comes out in a continuous stream, so that they are called continuants. And because they produce a hissing sound, they are also referred to as such. So that's it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Obria Morgie Abalon, and I will be your discussant for this afternoon. So I'm gonna discuss to you the oral communication strategies. Okay, so let's start. What is oral communication strategies? Oral communication strategies are employed in activities designed and utilized by a teacher to elicit free and spontaneous use of the target language in a classroom. Through these activities, the classroom is transformed into language acquisition rich setting, and students are given ample opportunities to develop fluency in the language. So these strategies will help the students or even teachers to enhance or mold their language skills, okay? To develop or to establish more fluent speaking skills. So we have a list of activities. First is we have simulation and role play. So simulation or role playing are teaching techniques that try to create a pretense of real life in the classroom. So this one is an activity which you will make your students feel that the scenario they are acting is happening in real life or in reality. But of course, this activity will only occur inside of the classroom. Okay? So next is we have the discussion activities. So getting students involved in discussion activities is an effective way of promoting communication in a classroom. Why? So that students may throw a question to you, and also discussion activities can take on different forms depending on what is discussed and the objective of the discussion. So this one example is you can tell a story to your students or give them an activity, and of course students are very conscious, right? So they will ask you a question, and by asking questions, discussion now will occur in that scenario. Okay, so you can exchange thoughts and idea, okay, regarding to the issue or to the topic that you discussed. Okay, so under the discussion activity, we have problem solving activity. In the activity, the students are presented with a situation that possess a problem on which they meet to find a solution. So in this activity, class or teachers, the logic or the critical thinking of the learners will be enhanced or developed, because students will be given a specific problem, and then later on the long run of their thinking, they will come up with a solution for that specific problem. Okay, so it will develop or it will enhance their cognitive also. Okay, so next is the consensus seeking activity. Here, the students are given an important issue for discussion. They first indicate their own views and stand on the issue. Then, they try to convince each other and arrive at just one stand on the matter. Okay, so in this activity, students will be given issue, and then they will think, or they will give their idea or their thoughts, their opinion about the specific issue. And then on the last part, of course, they must conclude to one specific matter. Okay, they will stand to one opinion only. Okay, so of course they will discuss it first, or it depends on the student if they want to think or they want to give their own opinion about their issue individually, okay, or by a group. Okay, next is the moral dilemma issue. So in this discussion activity, the students are presented with a situation where they have to make a decision based on their principles. So this one class, this will also relate the identity of the student. Okay, so let's say for example class, a student, the whole class is given a scenario, or they voted to one religion. Let's say for example, the majority of the class are Muslims. So it is not necessarily that you as an individual Christian, you will indulge or you will change your religion to Muslim because majority of your classmates are Muslim. Okay, so this one, decision making is also be tested. Okay, so of course in deciding, you will based on your principles and values. Another example, some of your classmates are doing bad things. So it is not because you are part of that one section, you will also do bad things because your classmate does. Of course, you will portray your principle and your values. Okay, so next is humanistic activities. So these activities usually have a dual purpose, linguistic as well as the effective. So the former gives practice on a grammar point problem, while the latter aims to establish a warm, supportive, non-threatening climate in the classroom. Of course, in these humanistic activities, this will rule the behaviorism of each student. Okay, like guiding, how they care, how they teach one another without judging, something like that. So we also have language games. So this one is very exciting, especially to elementary level. So language games are generally experiential, inviting students to take part in or to witness language behavior, thus also bring to the students' attention their own attitude and those of others, which can be as powerful as language itself. So this one class, or teachers, you can use this language games. Example, if your student or you are teaching in a lower grade like grade 1, 2, 3, and then some of your learners cannot produce the sound correctly or they cannot distinguish the whole word. So for them to develop their skills, so you can use this language game. Okay, example, you're going to give them a rumble words, and then they will what do you call this, they will form it to its original form. What are the language games? Flip charts can also help their reading skills. What else? Flip chart, atlas, what else? Spelling, that will also help their reading skills and then their oral communication. So also, under the language games, we have the relaying and carrying out instruction. So students give each other instruction. The success of this activity depends on the correct giving and interpreting interpreting of instruction. So in this activity, teachers or classmates, the unity is being tested also, and of course their understanding. Let's say for example in my class, they will pass what is the instruction, and it will be tested if the last student at the end of the aisle or of the line will get the correct instruction given by the teacher. Okay, next is story construction game. So this game is based on the principle of information gap. The students are divided into groups, and each group is given one picture to study. The groups are given disbanded, and one student per group is placed with representatives from the other group to form new teams. So this one also is very exciting game. So this one is similar to what is the other one earlier? The discussion activity. Okay? So we have the group activity. So first we have the dyadic or pair work. So the students are asked to pair off and interact with each other as they carry out the task assigned to them. So this activity is by pair. So whatever the activity is given to them, they will do it by pair. Okay? For example, interview. Okay? Interview. What else? Portraying characters or any games. Next is the small group discussion. So probably in this group discussion, the participants may consist of, if I'm not mistaken, 5 to 6 to complete the small group discussion. Of course, what they will do is they will be given a specific topic, and then they will do a brainstorming to conclude to one matter or to one objective. Okay? So we also have the several stages in a conversation. So I have here a list. So one, we have the opening. So open the conversation by getting the attention of the person. Okay, so as a speaker, your rule is to open the conversation. Of course, you may greet them, you may ask question, give quotation to get their attention. Okay, so next one is the introduction. Introduce the central topic of the conversation. So in introduction, of course, you will give what is the topic to be discussed during that discussion. Next, as we have the turn taking. So turn taking, the topic is developed by means of conversation, exchange of turn taking. So this one, class, when we say turn taking in a conversation, it is when you and your receiver are having a conversation, right? So turn taking will occur if you give your receiver the chance to talk. So that is turn taking. After talking, I keep on talking, and then turn taking, you will give a chance to your receiver to talk or to ask question. Okay, so that the conversation will round to the present in that discussion. So next is the topic shift. A change in the topic of discussion can also be introduced by using transition devices. So in topic shift class, this one is when you have a group members, right? You are discussing one specific topic, and here one of your members discuss another topic. So that is called the topic shift. Let's say for example, the whole group is discussing about inflammation. So this one suddenly change the topic to school system or educational system. So that is the topic shift. Okay, so next is the pre-closing, when one wants to close the conversation. So if you are the member, or if you are member in that one group and then you want to pre-close the conversation, you may use so, or a question, or a conclusion. Okay, so lastly, we have the closing. This is usually done by giving the adjacency pairs of leaving. Of course, you will say goodbye or thank you, something like that. Okay, we also have the rules in small group discussion. Of course, rules are important also. So one is the process observer. So the rule of this is doesn't take part in the discussion. So from the word itself, he or she only observe the whole discussion. Of course, the members. Next is the facilitator. Sees to it that discussion proceeds smoothly. Okay, so facilitator, the role of this is only to guide, to give instruction. Okay, so initiator, the one who starts the discussion, asking questions. So initiator, the opener of the conversation. So clarifier makes clear any vague utterances during the exchange or in the answer to the question raised. So clarifier, if there are vague questions or answer given by the receiver or by the listener, so the clarifier will clear out what is the thought or what is the idea uttered by that speaker or by that student. So energizer, what is the role of the energizer? Comes in when the discussion becomes dull or dragging. So if the discussion comes to boring state, of course, the energizer will provide some short activity to energize or to awaken the sleeping brain cells of the members in that group discussion. So summarizer, make a summary at the end of the discussion, gives a running summary while the discussion is going on. So summarize. Next is recorded or reporter. So it's necessary only if there is a big group presentation. So if your group is conducting a big discussion, of course, recorder will record the vital information given by that reporters. Okay, so timer limits the time of each speaker. This rule is also non-obligatory. So this timer, the rule of this is only optional. Okay, so but the rule of this is, let's say for example, every member of that small group discussion will be given 2 minutes to talk or to express their idea. After 2 minutes, select another one. Then the other one will be given a chance also, but they will only consume the 2 minutes. Okay, and it will be guided by the timer. Okay, so that is the end of my report. Thank you for listening. Bye. Bye bye.
Hello, my name is Maria Isabel Gabani, and today I am going to discuss to you the one-way oral communication. Okay, let's start. Okay, so what is one-way oral communication? So when we say one-way oral communication, it is often called public speaking. It is also known as public communication, rhetorical communication, collective communication, and audience communication. So this event consists of a speaker who talks to an audience. Oral interaction between speaker and audience seldom takes place, if at all. So this type of communication is observed when one delivers an oral report, a briefing, a technical analysis, a tribute, a sermon, a lecture, or a commencement address. Okay, so the most common form of one-way communication is the speech. In most speeches, the speaker have as their objective one or more of the basic purposes of one-way communication, of which there are three. So this time we are going to talk about the three classification of speeches according to purpose. So the first speech is speech to inform. Okay, so this type of speech aims to get the listeners to know more about a subject or something new. It is designed to enlighten or instruct them that is to increase their knowledge and understanding of the topic. So, in delivering informative speech, so this is how you do it. The first one, you have to emphasize how listeners can benefit from the information. The second one, relate the information to the interest of the audience. And the third one, dream up ways to get audience participation. Okay, so this may be done through one of these ways. You can ask questions, distribute a copy of the outline of the speech to help the listeners follow and remember important points. Give the audience forms to fill out, checklists to complete, quizzes to take as the speaker delivers his talk, present a statement, then ask the listener to raise their hands if they've heard it before, believe it, or can you use it. And the last one, use humor, clever comparisons, compelling contrasts, visual aids, curious notes, gestures, voice movement, and all other techniques you can dream up. Okay, so next is we have the speech to persuade. So after the speech to inform, let's move on to persuade. Okay, the speaker who believes the speech desires to influence the decision or judgment of his or her audience. Okay, so the aim of this speech is to sway the feelings of listeners or convince them to a particular line of action. In a speech to persuade, three types of appeals may be employed to develop an argument or a case. So the first appeal is the logical. So, logical, using the logical appeal to persuade listeners means using reasoning. So we have two reasoning, the inductive and the deductive reasoning. So when we say inductive reasoning, it is presenting the evidence before stating the conclusion based on the evidence. More facts and reasons are cited leading to the viewpoint and stand of the speaker. Okay. While the deductive reasoning, it starts with a general principle or idea before moving on to specifies that illustrates or support the principle. It also aims to enable the listeners to arrive at a conclusion, make a decision, or adopt a point of view. The next appeal is the psychological appeal. So, a psychological appeal works on the audience needs, desires, motives, and feelings and concerns. For example, a commercial for non-fat milk is addressed to the consumer's need to be healthy and to maintain a beautiful body. The third one is the personal appeal. A personal appeal is based on the speaker's reputation with or influence on the audience. So it is effective when the speaker is accepted by the audience as authoritative, knowledgeable, or influential. The speaker's influence may be based on his or her position or knowledge of the topic or issue. Okay, so next is the speech to entertain. So that is also one of the speeches. Okay, this type of speech is characterized by lightness in tone, good humor and fun. It may come in the form of an after dinner speech or a roast of a well-known personality. So on the whole, however, every speaker should know how to include the bits of humor in his or her speech, regardless of its purpose. This is one way of attracting the attention of the listeners. Some basic techniques for creating humors are the following. Okay, so first, using yourself as the butt of the joke. Punning or a play of words. Number 3, literal translation. Number 4, focusing on incongruities and inconsistencies. Number 5, playing up the irony of the situation. And number 6, witticism. Okay, next is the classification of speeches according to method of delivery. So, we have different classification of a speech according to delivery. So, we have the first one, the reading of the manuscript. So, in this type of speech, the speech delivery, the speaker reads his or her speech from a prepared manuscript or text. More often than not, these are formal speeches such as the State of the Nation address of the President, the keynote speech in conventions, technical papers read in seminars, etc. The language used in these papers is usually formal. The next one is extemporaneous speech. Here, the speaker delivers his or her speech with the help of his or her notes, which are prepared beforehand. Extemporaneous speech is not written out in full. Nonetheless, the speaker's notes manifest the speaker's thorough preparation. Number 3 is reciting from memory. The speech is memorized and delivered without the reference to a prepared text or notes. Although this speech is thoroughly memorized, the speaker will do well to deliver it in as natural manner as possible. So impromptu speech. This speech is delivered at the spur of the moment. The speaker has had no formal preparation beforehand except for a few minutes to collect his or her thoughts on the subject matter. Okay, so now let's move on the tips on good delivery. So, of course, before we present ourselves in front of a crowd, we have to know the different tips on good delivery. So, we have to be cautious of our gestures when we are in front of many people. So, here are some of the tips. The first one is direct eye contact. So, this simply means that the speaker looks at the audience squarely in the eyes. This may prove difficult in the case of the speaker reading the manuscript. Nonetheless, it is important that the speaker look up from the manuscript now and then and look directly at the audience. This must be done properly so that the quality of delivery will not suffer. Okay, the next one is the effective use of voice. So, under this is we have the volume, rate of speaking, pitch, articulation, pause, and fluency. So, why is it important to use the proper use of voice, specifically volume? So the voice should be loud enough to be heard by the audience. The speaker should adjust his or her voice to the acoustics of the room, the size of the audience, and the level of background noise. Okay, how about the rate of speaking? So, this refers to the speed at which the person speaks. To achieve the correct rate of speaking, the speaker should consider the following: the mood to be created, the composition of the audience, and the nature of the occasion. Next is we have the pitch. An effective speaker should also use pitch to clarify and emphasize the ideas in his or her message. Varying the pitch of voice in speaking makes the difference between a good and bad delivery of speech. While articulation, that is to produce sounds distinctly, the speaker should learn to manipulate his vocal apparatus, the lips, tongue, jaw, and soft palate properly. Pause. Pauses are usually made at the end and not in the middle of the thought unit, except in the case of emphatic stress. It is very important for the speaker to make brief, momentary pauses in his or her speech to enable the audience to fully understand the meaning of the message and to follow the speaker's trend of thought. And lastly, the fluency. So a speech must flow smoothly. Repetitions or expressions like or tend to interrupt the flow of the message and distract the attention of the audience. Next is we have the effective bodily action. So, effective bodily action on the part of the speaker takes into consideration of his or her posture or poise, movement on stage, facial expression, and gestures. So, these are referred to as nonverbal language because they also convey meaning to the audience. Okay, so under this is we have the posture. So posture or poise is significant because even before the speaker opens his mouth to deliver his or her talk, the audience judges him or her on the basis of how he or she looks and carries himself or herself on stage. And that is how he or she stands and holds his arms. So, here are the instances or posture you might want to avoid. So, the first one is at a stance. So, that is when the hands are crossed behind the back like soldiers, though the at is when they carry out the command in the military. Okay, so the second one is the defiant or overbearing stance. So that is made when the arms are crossed on the chest. It suggests defiance on the part of the speaker or the audience may adjudge him to be proud, overbearing, or aloof. And the third one, Adam and Eve is stance. The Adam and Eve stance is when the speaker crosses his hand in front like a leaf which was used by Adam and Eve to cover their nakedness. So this stances suggest shyness or a feeling of inadequacy on the part of the speaker. Okay, the next one is the movement. So movement practice is necessary to enable the speaker to move purposely on stage. A step to the right or to the left shows that the speaker has concluded one argument and is beginning another. A step forward suggests greater emphasis or intimacy with the audience. A step backward suggests reconsideration or summary or review. Next is the facial expressions. So the audience is basically composed of men and women who are interested in life that is active and productive. The speaker must be alert and animated when he or she talks to the face should convey the meaning of the words used. Next is we have the gestures. So gestures should be normal and natural. It is not advisable to repeat the same gesture over and over again. The hands are often used for emphatic gestures. They are classified under 5 headings. So we have the palm up, palm down, vertical palm, index finger, and clench fist. Okay, so when we say palm up, the extended hand with the palm up is used for mild emphasis or for appealing to an audience to consider an idea. While palm down, this is a downward or sideward movement indicating rejection, distrust, or disapproval. The next one is vertical palm. The hand is held toward the audience or to the speaker's right or left. It suggests limitation when this line is delivered. We must put on immediate stop to a child abuse. Index finger. So the pointing gesture by the index finger suggests that an idea is especially significant. It is also an accusing or warning gesture. This sentence may illustrate the point. I charge you to act now to ensure the safety of our children. Okay, and the last one is clenched fist. It suggests that the speaker is prepared to defend his or her idea. It is used to give additional emphasis or express a strong declaration such as the following. The land is a property of no one. It is an inclusive possession of no generation. Okay, so that's all for my report. Thank you for listening. We are down to our last episode, which is the oral interpretation. Okay, so what is oral interpretation? So, in this definition, it is said that it is a form of communicating ideas and feelings from a literary piece through the movements of the body, gestures, facial expressions, and effective use of voice. Certain types of oral interpretation are discussed and presented in this episode. These are chorale speaking, rendered by a speech choir or a verse choir, readers theater, storytelling, and chamber theater. Today, we see a revival of interest in the oral interpretation of text. We have varied ways of heightening appreciation for literary pieces by presenting them orally with feelings and precision. So the presentation may be also in solo, in storytelling, group as in readers theater or chamber theater, or a combination of the two as in oral chorale speaking. Okay, so this time I am going to talk to you the first part, which is the chorale speaking. So chorale speaking is the use of group voices creating a harmony of sounds as they read aloud a literary piece to give the listeners an experience that is both intense and exhilarating. Okay, so there are 4 types of chorale speaking arrangement, namely, okay, we have the refrain, line a child, antiphonal, and unison. Okay, a combination of these different arrangements may be used in a single literary piece. It is the piece itself that gives us an idea as to the suitable arrangement it to use. Okay, so let's discuss the first speaking arrangement. Okay, so the first one is refrain. So this is the simplest type of arrangement where a soloist speaks most of the time. Okay, so the speaker says aloud practically all of the lines except for those that are repeated intermittently, serving like a chorus in a song. So these repeated lines are called a refrain, and it is the entire class or speech choir that utters in unison the lines that constitute the refrain. So that is refrain. Okay, the second one is line a child. So the second type is what we call line a child. So here, a child or a group of 2 to 4 children speaks a line or a couplet followed by another child who picks up where the previous speaker left off. Thus, particular lines are assigned beforehand to certain individuals for them to say aloud, one after another in the other, that these lines appear in the poem. So, a selection with a number of enumerations would lend itself to this arrangement. Okay, the third arrangement, namely the antiphonal, is sometimes called two-part work, where one group responds to another. So this is observed in communal worship. Light voices can contrast with dark voices. Poems where two speakers interact with each other, such as The Sea by Natividad Marquez, wherein a child asks question answered by his mother, is suited to such an arrangement. The lines of the child are said by one of the group and those of the mother by the other group. And finally, the last type of arrangement is the unison, where the entire group speaks the lines together. So, precision and beauty are achieved through the skillful direction of the choir master. Blending and voicing are crucial in such arrangement. Okay, so the next oral interpretation is the reader's theater. Reader's theater is storytelling by a group. The characters in the story are identified and a reader for each character is chosen. So these reader actors read their assigned lines to the audience to convey thoughts and feelings by using their voice, face, and a few gestures. A reader narrator reads lines or passages which explain an action or describe a scene or character. When there are two or more reader narrators, they should learn to speak together as in a speech choir. Okay, so moreover, often than not, props and sets are not needed on stage in a reader's theater presentation. So there are, however, some suggested guidelines for the readers concerning the presentation and delivery of their lines. So here are those. Okay, so the first one is readers direct their lines to the audience. So they do not look at each other. So they hold their focus to their audience. The second one is each reader holds a copy of selection which he or she reads to the audience. So, in other words, the readers do not memorize the lines. The third one is the reader should observe these pointers. So we have here pointers on how to deliver lines. Okay, the first one is read loud enough to be heard. Okay, so make sure that your voice is audible enough to be heard by the audience. The second is pronounce words clearly and correctly. So before you proceed on the presentation, you have to practice the correct pronunciation of the lines. The third one is hold the book or material properly. So make sure that um, your materials or the book that you use in the presentation um, is intact, or everyone is in uniform. Everyone of you holds the same with the material. Okay, so the fourth one is stand erect, feet a little apart, one foot a bit forward. So, in other words, so you have to make sure that you, do not make unnecessary movement. So you have to um, stand formal when you deliver a line. The next one is vary the voice for expression, volume, pitch, tone, quality, and speed. Okay, so you have to vary your expression with the lines. So you have to match your facial expression or the tone of your voice depending on the line. Okay, the next one, let the face mirror what is being said. And the last one, look at the audience often to make them feel you are talking to them. So make an eye contact. Okay, so the fourth guidelines is sustain the interest of the audience so they will eagerly follow the events up to the end. So those are the guidelines for the reader's delivery of lines. Okay, so the next um, oral interpretation is the storytelling. So I know you are all familiar with this. So when we say storytelling, it is one type of oral interpretation concerned with narrating a story or tale. Okay, so unlike the reader's theater, this requires only one performer who tells the story either by reading it or by narrating it from memory as was shown on videos. Okay, so some of the guidelines, so we have also here guidelines in um, this one. Okay, so some guidelines are likewise given for this form of oral interpretation. Okay, so the first one is you have to select the story carefully. So you have to choose your story depending on your target audience. Okay, consider the listener's age and level of understanding in the choice of the story to tell. Number two is know the story very well. This means that you will have to read it several times until the characters of events are vivid in your mind. The second one is after reading the story several times, set it aside and think it through incident by incident. And next is study the characters and their words. And next is sequence the events and narrate them from the perspective of the characters. Okay, so um, those are the things that you should remember in um, knowing the story very well. So you have to know the sequence very well, or the characters, you have to know them very well. Okay, so the third guidelines is you have to introduce the story carefully. Okay, so you have to relate the story simply to the experience of the audience. The fourth one, pace the story accordingly. So some stories are told timidly, others inci- incessantly, and move on uninterruptedly. And the last one is use your voice effectively. Okay, you need not use gestures, just a few facial expressions will do. It is your expressive voice that should carry the story. Okay.
Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to episode 13 entitled Integrating Speaking Skills with Other Skills. My name is Ryan Lopez. So, shall we start? The objectives of this episodes are the following: to design speaking tasks observing communication principles, to develop oral interaction skills. Number 2, monitor and process pair work and small group discussions. Number 3, write a lesson plan integrating the 4 macro language skills with emphasis on speaking. Number 4, provide differentiated tasks to meet the different learning styles of students and to address multiple intelligence. Pedagogical modes that encourage oral interaction. Traditionally, classroom interaction was teacher-centered, with teacher talk almost double that of the pupil. This could not help because of the nature of the classroom interaction, which follows the pattern. The teacher elicits, the pupil responds, and the teacher reacts. So we grow up in a traditional classroom setting where teachers are the ones who talk the most, and we just talk if we are being asked by our teachers. But nowadays it's kind of different. More often, it was the teacher who initiated, direct the interaction cycle. Pupil hardly initiated interactions. Their role was simply to respond, and teacher gave feedback to their response. Hence, every response from a pupil, the teacher actually talked twice. With focus now placed on the learner, other pedagogical modes have surfaced to give greater responsibility and involvement to the learner and to provide them with more opportunities to internet and use of language. There are 3 most common modes used in language classroom. Number 1 is milling around activities. Number 2, pair work activities. Number 3, small group discussions. Milling around activities, a big group activity with the students instructed to go around in search of a person or persons who, number one, have the same picture as they do. Number two, have the qualities specified in the search sheet. And number three, have a word that is related to their word. Pair work activity. Dyadic or pair work lends itself well to interviews, sharing sessions, giving and carrying out interaction, agree, disagree exercises. Interviews. Interviews provide practice in asking and answering questions, as well as sequencing core and follow-up questions and deploying communication check to determine if one got correct information. Sharing sessions necessitate narrating skills. The pair can take turns sharing with each other their different ideas about a given topic or issue. So in sharing sessions, a pair of students share their thoughts, their knowledge about certain ideas, and it is very helpful because they are sharing their knowledge, they are learning from each other. Carrying. Number three is the carrying, giving and carrying instructions. Call for use of imperatives, and in case of directions entail the use of localitives as well. Number four, the agree or disagree. Exercise has its objectives, convincing each other when called for on arriving at a consensus. And lastly, the small group discussion. Provide the class with the opportunity to initiate a discussion, contribute to the development of the topic, ask clarification, take turns of having the floor, shift to another topic, and bring the discussion to a close. So small group discussion allows a group of students to share their knowledge. Each and every one of them will share their thoughts, their knowledge about a certain issue, about a certain idea, and if and when everybody is done giving their thoughts and their ideas, the discussion will be closed. That's it. The roles of teachers in the interaction process. Number one, when designing oral interaction, care must be taken that the principles underlying the communication is observed. Instructions as to what the students are to do and the objective of the activity should likewise be clear to the class before they start on the task. So it is very clear to us teachers that every time there is a group activity, rubrics should be announced before the start of the activity, because this gives the students a guide on what are the things they should focus, when they should focus. That's it. Number two, as the students work on the activity, the teacher observes what goes on during the discussion. Since the thrust of the activity is to develop fluency, the teacher should refrain from interrupting discussions to correct linguistic errors. He or she just take note on the errors to be worked on during the process of the activity and feedback sessions. So the teacher should roam around to observe what is happening in the classroom. We must consider the needs of our students. We should not be interrupting the students, especially when they are reporting. We should not interrupt when they have grammar errors or mispronounced word. It should be done after the discussion or after the reporting. Number 3. The process of the activity should not only include the content or substance of the discussion. It should also look in the process that took place. Students should be made aware not only of the linguistic errors and errors in thinking that surfaced during the discussion, but also of their conversational styles as shown in the interaction ensued. Teaching tips. First is motivation. The objective of this phase of the lesson is to activate background schema so the students will be able to interact with the text. So this is very common to ask teachers that we must give motivation to arouse the interest of our students. That's it. Clearance. Number 2 is clearance of difficulties. The part of the lesson that calls the attention to expression that may pose difficulty to the students. To us English teachers, we have this what we call unlocking of difficulties. These are unfamiliar words given before reading a selection or a text, so that when the students will encounter such word, they will understand the meaning of the word. That's it, unlocking of difficulties or clearance of difficulties. Number 3, giving of the motive questions. The reason of giving questions prior to reading of the poem is to make the reading purposeful, since students will be on the lookout for answers to the questions raised. So somehow giving motive questions is like giving the students what is the story all about, what are the possible questions we teachers will raise after reading the selection or the text. That's it. Number 4, first reading of the poem. It is suggested that the teacher does the first reading of the poem as the students silently read along. This is so because students have no comprehension of the poem yet. So we must read the selection, the poem first before the students, because they doesn't have comprehension yet of the selection given to them. Number 5, answering of motive questions. Instead of asking individual students to answer raised, small group discussion took place. This enables the students to think collectively and to arrive at a consensus, even as it is provided with the practice in speaking and decreased teacher talking time. Of course, for them to be able to understand the selection, we teachers must raise noted questions and let them answer the questions. One student will ask another student, or a group of students will ask another group of students. Those are some ways of giving noted questions. Number 6, in-depth discussion and other reinforcement enrichment activities. Once more, this provided them with practice in speaking, even as it is developed their spatial intelligence. Number 7 rather, second reading of the poem, intended to be to heighten appreciation of the poem. Of course, after the second reading, this intends to heighten, to hype the appreciation of the poem by the students. Enrichment materials. We have information gap, jigsaw puzzle, purposive, differential roots, and real-time processing. Information gap, raising questions and sharing what he or she knows to check if the perception is correct. Of course, sometimes we must ask our students. So, for example, what do you know about this certain topic? What is your opinion on this certain topic? So that it can to check if they have prior knowledge to certain issue or idea. Jigsaw puzzle. In any interaction, each contributes to the development of the topic. Number 3, purposive. Underlying exchanges in any oral interactions is a communication goal or objective. Number 4, differential roots. Listener can determine when two utterances, though worded differently, are actually saying the same thing. When we say differential roots, it is distinguishing if the students really understood the discussion. For example, two different words, or two words with the same meaning, though wordy, but still they manage to explain the difference, the things that made them the same. That's it. Real-time processing. Speaker should be able to encode his or her ideas spontaneously and effortlessly. Of course, a student can process the idea, the discussion, without hesitation, very spontaneously, on the spot questions. She was able to answer such questions without hesitations. That's it. That ends the episode 13. Once again, I am Ryan Lopez. Thank you for watching. Good day, everyone.